All right, Steeler fans, it's time to go behind enemy lines. Week 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers host the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. Shockingly, the last time the Steelers lost on Monday Night Football was in the mid-90s to the New York Giants. And with that, I'm bringing in two gentlemen that cover the Giants for Fans First Sports Network, Alex and Josh. Alex, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Been a rough season for the Giants so far, obviously, as it's been every year for 10 years or so now. But
Yeah,
always fun when the Giants are in prime time, and a classic matchup here with the Steelers. So still excited despite the poor start for us.
for sure. Josh, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. It's good to talk to you. Like we were saying a little bit before the show, nice little distraction from, you could see, this way, the Syracuse sign over here. Nice little distraction talking about the New York Giants from our schoolwork here at college, but also kind of depressing because this team has not been good. And you know what? This is why we're here. We'll get into it with you. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so their podcast is The Giant Take, which is a part of Fans First Sports Network, and they do great work. So make sure if you want to check out what they're doing leading up to the game, you can go check them out there. You can check them out at fansfirstsports.com as well. You can find their podcast right there on the website. But guys, I want to ask you a bunch of questions, but I want to start with the offense because I think by all metrics, it's been disappointing for the Giants. It just has not come to fruition. It hasn't clicked. Brian Daboll didn't really make much of a difference, but I want to start with the quarterback. So Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, whatever you want to call him, they give him the big contract. Everyone's thinking, okay, they might have found their guy. Josh, we'll start with Josh, then we'll go to Alex. What exactly has been the biggest issue with Daniel Jones in terms of just consistency?
I really think it comes to a matter of circling through his progressions. He's not really able to find that guy in the receiving game. And I think really getting the addition of Malik Neighbors for a couple weeks helped him do that because that was always his first read. Let's throw to Malik Neighbors, no matter what the route is. If it's a deep route, a hook route, a slant, whatever it was, that was the first read. That's where Jones fired the ball. And then Malik Neighbors gets this concussion, which has ruled him out now for about 3 weeks. Still waiting to see if we'll get him in full, in a full go against the Steelers team, which he wasn't a full go against the Eagles last week, it seemed like. And so without that Malik Neighbors, it's been what Daniel Jones has been used to throughout his entire career, which is not having reliable wide receivers on his side. Now, I'm not saying that's, taking away from the fact that Daniel Jones is a poor quarterback, because when he does find those guys, the ball is overthrown, underthrown, everything but on target, basically. Whatever word you want to pick out, that's really what the balls are going to be to Jones. We've talked about it on our show. It's really, truly unfortunate because I think that, people are giving a bunch of credit to Malik Neighbors so far this season, which he should be, because when he has been healthy, he's been very solid for this team. But there's also other players that they're getting open. The Darius Slaytons of the world, the Jalen Hyatts, the Wan'Dale Robinsons, on some of their routes, they are getting open, and Jones just is not able to connect with them. So I think it's really just about getting through those progressions. And when he does eventually find a receiver, it's a bad ball.
Okay, Alex, I'll let you chime in on Daniel Jones. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Josh said. I think at this point also it's getting to a confidence issue for him as well. I mean, the New York media we know is ferocious. They will not let you have a bad game. And when Daniel Jones strings a few bad games together, there's people calling for his head at all times. And I think Malik Neighbors kind of gave him a little bit of a breather because the New York media was kind of able to focus on him for a couple of weeks. But now Malik Neighbors was out for 2 games, as Josh mentioned, kind of still not fully integrated back in against the Eagles. Probably will be against the Steelers, but Daniel Jones kind of had moving pieces. Andrew Thomas now out for the season as well, which is a huge loss for the Giants. And Josh Azudu, who is playing at left tackle, obviously a natural guard for the Giants, very much struggled against the Eagles, giving up multiple sacks. So the Steelers obviously have, a pretty strong defensive line, and the Giants offensive line has not been able to hold up against some of the better defensive lines that we've faced so far. And with Andrew Thomas out, and I don't know what exactly they're going to do this week, whether that is maybe bringing Evan Neal back into the fold, who obviously has been a huge disappointment for us, or signing someone outside the building. There's not going to be a lot of protection for Jones, and he's going to have to rely on Neighbors, and he's going to have to somehow get his confidence up and make sure that he is delivering the ball on point with not a lot of time in the pocket.
I just wanted to reiterate too,
like,
sorry, Jeff. I just wanted to say,
you're fine.
Alex mentions the O-line. I mentioned the wide receivers. I want everyone to just still realize, though, because obviously I know we're talking to a made audience that is not Giants fans. These issues we're still blaming Daniel Jones for most of these things. I know a lot of things have not gone his way here, and I understand that. He really hasn't had a true receiving core with rotating guys in and failed older wide receivers like Golden Tate years ago and Kenny Galladay, and now we're bringing in guys like Malik Neighbors, and his most reliable receiver has really been Darius Slayton, who's a wide receiver 3 on most NFL teams. And then the O-line with the rotations. Everything is understandable to an extent because it still falls on the quarterback. And it's still the case, even in year 6 now, that Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. So I just wanted to make that clear for everyone, that's watching.
No, I get it. No, for sure. And so I think that when you look at the numbers, like the Giants are tied for 30th in the NFL points per game, 14.1 points per game. They've surrendered 22 sacks this season, which is 3rd most in the NFL. I know it's a Daniel Jones problem. I'm not debating that, but it just seems like there's layers to this, and they can't run the ball. They can't protect the quarterback. They don't have good wide receivers. This almost feels like, and Brian Daboll is an offensive minded head coach. It seems like they got to tear it down and try and rebuild it, which would take years. And the thing is, and this is what I want to go to next, is that the defense is really good. The Giants defense. I mean, you're talking about the complete 180 from what the offense is. Really good defense, solid up front. They are solid in the back half. They're not taking the ball away as much as I thought they would, but nonetheless, a really good defense. Alex, I'll start with you this time. What's your takeaway? What's made the Giants defense just so stout this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all stems from the defensive line and in that interior with Dexter Lawrence. He is having a fantastic season so far, defensive player of the year candidate, in my unbiased opinion, of course. And, he's been really, really strong in there. And then Brian Burns has slowly come along in the past couple of weeks. Obviously, big trade from the Panthers, a lot of money given to him in the offseason. And he started off the year slow, not making a lot of impact, but Kayvon Thibodeau's been out with injury the past week or so, or week or two, excuse me. And he's really come on in that role. Azeez Ojulari coming in to replace Thibodeau has also been really, really impactful. He's gotten a whole bunch of sacks over the past few weeks. So it's really all started with that core on the defensive line. It's all about the trenches for the Giants, really. And then this young DB group as well. Obviously, Deonte Banks in his 2nd year has, definitely shown some improvement. And some of the other guys like a Drew Phillips, who I think no one's really talking about outside of the Giants scope, I guess. He's been a really impactful rookie for us in the slot and making a whole bunch of huge plays in the screen game. He had a huge tackle for loss against the Eagles last week. He's been able to, recover fumbles in weeks previous. So he's been really, really impactful for the Giants. And these DBs that we thought were going to be a little bit shaky on the back end have mostly held up against premium receivers that we've played so far this season.
All right. So Josh, I want to throw it over to you. I have a question. It's a question of every team, every defense, no matter how good, they have their weaknesses. And so you talked ad nauseum about the weaknesses on the offensive side of the ball, but what about on the defensive side? Where can they be attacked? I mean, they did give up 28 points to the Eagles last week, and the Eagles did take their foot off the gas in the 4th quarter. Where's the weakness in this defense?
Well, Alex kind of just talked about it by giving praise to them a little bit, and he's not wrong. Deonte Banks is really, though, the only sort of huge bright spot in the secondary. I would say that with the loss of Xavier McKinney at safety, that really was a burden for the New York Giants that they didn't truly address in the offseason. Now, again, they did bring in a guy like Drew Phillips, and they do still have Dane Belton from last year. So they did make some, they either kept some players or they, added up in the draft with later round picks. But then at the same time, and Tyler Nubin, sorry, I forgot about him as well, another draft pick the Giants made addressing the safety spot. But like Alex said, it's still a young group of guys. These aren't top tier players. So it's really funny how we haven't truly seen a team fully expose that area yet, especially after playing teams like the Eagles this past week, where they have A.J. Brown, who did have 90 yards and only 5 catches. The previous week before that, on prime time against the Bengals, against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, they both had over 70 yards receiving. And then even before that, you look at a guy like DK Metcalf with the Seahawks. So I do think, especially after what we saw last week with what Pickens was doing against that Jets team, I think we're going to see something very similar with him going against Banks. If they don't have him again, if the Giants don't send Banks on Pickens, then maybe they'll do a double team. That's what they did with Jamar Chase, where they sent 2 other younger DBs on Jamar Chase in that game and left Higgins one-on-one with Banks. I know Alex and I were talking about that previously, but that could definitely be the case. And I love how, by the way, it's just, we're talking about weaknesses and how bad this team is. I mentioned it again, and my flag's just falling down. It's like the Giants know. It's like they're watching. My flag is falling down behind me. That's how depressing this team is right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's hysterical. All right. I'm going to ask Alex about the offense. Josh, I'm going to ask you about the defense. We'll start with Alex on the offensive side. We know the names, Neighbors, Jones. Give me a name of a player on the offensive side of the football who maybe is flying under the radar, having a good season. And let's all keep this in perspective. And I understand I'm not trying to ask you guys to just beat the crap out of your team, but at the same time, who's a name? Give me a name, couple names, doesn't matter, of a player that most fans that are not fans of the Giants are not knowing who they are, but they might actually make an impact in the game.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind, and I think Steelers fans will see him right off the bat, Tyrone Tracy, rookie running back, 5th-round pick. He's slowly come on as the season's progressed. Devin Singletary was out a couple weeks with a groin injury, came back against Philadelphia, but it's really turned into the Tyrone Tracy backfield for New York, and he's been really impactful in the running game. But as an ex-receiver in college, actually, I think we're going to see him more and more in the passing game. And I don't know if that's going to start here on Monday Night Football or later in the season, but that's a skill set that they really haven't delved into much for him. And I think is something that they're going to bring out at some point. And he's been running really effectively. And he's been playing, I believe he played 67% of the snaps against the Eagles, where Singletary was under 30%. So there was a lot of change, I guess. Maybe part of it was Singletary still recovering from that groin injury. So maybe he'll get him a bigger snap share come Monday Night Football. But that is someone who has been growing in terms of his role in the Giants offense. And then one other guy I'll mention, the Giants receivers obviously have not been the best this season. Besides Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton's had a couple of good games. Wan'Dale Robinson's kind of flown in and out of the game in terms of his impact on it. But Theo Johnson at the tight end position, another rookie, this time out of Penn State, he's had a touchdown called back against the Eagles this past Sunday. So he has been involved in the game plan. He has been getting catches, and they have looked his way at times. And I think that could be someone, say the receivers aren't really able to get involved. Malik Neighbors is being shut down. They could look Theo Johnson's way as well.
All right. Love it. That's great. Josh, let's go to the defensive side. Do the same thing for the defense.
Yeah, so the defensive side, I'm going to give 2 players some shout-outs, both of them technically linebackers at the core of things, but more one of the guys is an edge rusher, and you're going to talk about, everyone's talking about the big 3 and Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. But I want to mention someone in Azeez Ojulari off the edge that's actually tied with Brian Burns in sack totals this season. He has 4, also has a bunch of tackles for loss as well, and really breaking onto the scene this season. And when he's gotten sacks, everyone you're going to see on Giants Twitter, whether he does it, in primetime against the Steelers or not, you'll see on Giants Twitter, we should have signed him. Azeez Ojulari, looking for a new contract next offseason. And Giants fans are a little upset that we didn't pay him earlier before that day, because if he keeps up these sack totals, being tied with Brian Burns is a big deal. So he'll be getting some money towards the offseason. And then another player I want to mention that, the Giants fans is a familiar name, but Micah McFadden, who's one of the 2 linebackers the Giants have on their side, who is one of the leading tacklers for the team this season. He's right behind Tyler Nubin, actually, one of the youngsters and rookies the Giants have. But McFadden's normally alongside Bobby Okereke in that 2 linebacker system. He has a sack and a half this year. And yeah, McFadden's just a solid player, and he gets there. He makes tackles. He's not too bad in coverage. So another player I think that might fly underrated to some other teams that'll be, getting 100% of the snaps this weekend.
All right, great stuff, guys. I want to ask you one last question. Both of you will get an opportunity at this one. The Steelers, as of this being recorded, which is well before the game, and we're obviously talking about not knowing the final injury report, but the current odds are the Steelers are spotting 6.5 points with an over/under of 36.5. I don't need a score prediction. I just want to know what your gut feeling is, how this game plays out. Alex, I'll let you start.
Yeah, the Giants, I think, most likely will get off to a slow start. They've been getting off to slow starts lately. They're not going to come out and score, 3 or 4 touchdowns in this one. They're not a high flying offense. I do think it's going to be a game that is not going to be very, a lot of firepower on offense. I think it'll probably end up being pretty low scoring. And the Steelers obviously have been, doing pretty well. They obviously put up a ton of points against the Jets. So this Giants defense can be exposed at times, as we talked about. So I do think, the Steelers, I do think are going to take this one, but
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a blowout either way. And I do think the Steelers should have the game. They should be comfortable throughout, but I don't think you're going to see a 2 or 3 score difference.
All right, Josh, what do you think?
So I'm going to say it's, alongside with what Alex was saying, I think it's close throughout the first half. It's really, easy to see for the New York Giants when that defense sort of crumbles, and it's when it takes it into the second half in a close game. You look at the Bengals game, they only scored 7 points in the first half. The Eagles only had 14 at halftime. They only had like a touchdown or 2 lead, and then it just kind of crumbled because the offense, or the defense, played so many times, they're eventually going to get tired. And also the week prior to the Bengals game 3 weeks ago against the Seahawks, they only scored 20 points in that whole game. So I think that it'll be close throughout. I think both sides of the game are going to be on the edge of their seats at halftime. But then I think the Steelers will definitely break it open. And whatever Russell Wilson is cooking right now, I'm excited to watch. I really am, because one of my favorite players growing up on the Seahawks, and for the Steelers to make that decision, into the season right now, it's exciting. So I think that it will be another Giants loss. We'll be right back here talking about it like we always do. But yeah, that's my guess. And I'm going to be honest, if there was any quarterback that was going to do that to the Giants, it would be Russell Wilson. So I'm excited to see him.
All right, fair enough. Alex, I want to give you an opportunity to plug your podcast, and then I'll let you guys both plug social media handles and stuff like that.
Yeah, just please follow us, on Twitter at the Giant Take Pod. We post all our stuff on there. Podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, at the Giant Take Podcast. Josh is usually the one who plugs at the end, so I'm in uncomfortable territory right now. I'm in uncomfortable territory.
Go ahead, Josh. Do it. Do the plug.
Yeah, that was really cool for you to do that, because I wanted to see how Alex could perform on that stage.
How did I do? Did I do bad, Josh?
No, that was pretty good. You tackled everything. You're normally the listener, so I'm glad at least you retained some of the information.
I pay attention to you, Josh. Don't worry.
But yeah, no, Alex got everything right. The Giant Take Podcast, and obviously you can find us also on fansfordsportsnetwork.com too. Sure. And yeah, I think that's really everything. I mean, I know you said our Twitter, so my Twitter's at JoshOla29, but it's a lot of plugging for everyone. They know where to find us.
I get it.
You got it. You got it for us, Jeff.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Absolutely. No problem. So you can check out there at the Giant Take, again, fansfirstsports.com. You can find their feed there if you want to. Maybe you want to check them out next week if they're crying over the loss over on Monday Night Football, or maybe they're being jubilant over a victory and upset win over the Steelers. We'll see how this plays out. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the game, and we'll be in touch. Take it easy.